Hello, folks. Thanks for joining us on Head Inside Mental Health, featuring conversations about mental health and substance use treatment with experts, advocates, and professionals from across the country sharing their thoughts and insights on the world of behavioral healthcare. Broadcasting on WPVM 1037, the voice of Asheville Independent Commercial-Free Radio. I'm Todd Weatherly, your host, therapeutic consultant, and behavioral health expert, and with me today is Khalil McCarty, a child and family therapist in Bellingham, Washington. They're on the coast down from the Cascade Mountains, right?
hmm
She earned her master's in mental health and wellness and school counseling from New York University and is a board-certified autism specialist and assessment professional. Khalil specializes in working with neurodiverse individuals, including those diagnosed with autism, ADHD, pediatric bipolar disorder, mood disorders, PDA, for those who don't know, the pathological demand avoidance, and complex co-occurring conditions, including medical complexities, we'll get into that a little bit later. Bringing expertise in behavioral analysis, developmental disabilities, trauma-informed care, and psychotherapy for children and adolescents up to age 17, but works with the adults and the families as well. Over the course of her career, she has worked across community agencies, courts, schools, wraparound services, and other mental health programs, to some frustration, I imagine. In her practice, she takes an eclectic, individualized approach rooted in connection and understanding, helping children, youth, and their families rebuild foundations and thrive. She is a strong believer in client voice, safety, and self-advocacy. Khalil has found that art, play, and storytelling are among her most powerful tools in her work, evidence-based modalities that meet kids where they are and form the foundation for lasting healing. On the horizon for Khalil is also collaborating to open NeuroBloom, a therapeutic center for the neurodivergent population there locally. That sounds very exciting. Khalil, thanks for joining
Yeah.
us. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, um, you know, I spend a lot of time in this world finding resources for people. So trying to find people like you for people who need them.
Yeah.
A lot of times they're bouncing around the country because they're in crisis when they get to us, and
Yes.
they're looking for residential care or those kinds of things. But then they have to land again, and then they have to come back home. A lot of times, if you can, you also try to avoid going to treatment, but
hmm
people wait long, as you've seen, they wait long enough to be in crisis because they didn't know what to do. And it sounds like part of your work is you're finding individuals when they're reaching the first initial stages of, we don't know what to do anymore with our neurodivergent child. What is it that got you into that work in the first place? Like, how did you come into that?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Like they end up reaching me kind of at that point. Or, they've seen so many professionals and they've had bad experiences, or
Hmm.
they feel really invalidated by a lot of professionals they've seen and they don't know where to go next. And I think what got me into this point was also like my own lived experience of feeling that same invalidation, like not only through seeing professionals for help for myself, but also for my kids, and just feeling like I want there to be someone out there who was providing services who didn't get met with those same reactions. Like I wanted to be able to be out there and help people and be that affirming resource. And not that I felt like I could go help everyone in the world, but I kept needing these resources that were so unhelpful. Or like when my kids were diagnosed specifically as autistic, um, I just got this letter, was handed this folder, and then was like, you should probably go seek out ABA. And then they were like, bye. And I was like, wait, what do I do next? Like, what does this
Seek out
mean?
who? What?
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, what? And I was just like, this is so not how this should go. And at that time, I did have my therapy license, but I didn't really have a niche. I was just getting into it, and I was like, I want to change this. I want to make this better. And so that was really how I got going. And, not actually knowing at that time that I was autistic, I just did my very autistic thing. And I just went into this deep dive. And all of a sudden, next thing I know, I have, umpteen clock hours into, autistic specializations and all of these other things. And I was so I was so deep down that rabbit hole, and now I'm here.
Well, and you kind of did what a lot of parents will do is they'll dive into
Totally.
this rabbit hole, but you had a license at the time, so at least you had a grounding and understanding, clinical concepts and treatment in general and so on, which helps you like, well, no, that's not what I'm looking for, and that sounds like what I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
And these resources don't have enough, but this one over here, most people don't have that ability to differentiate. And they don't,
Right.
it's hard for them to feel guided by diving into the internet. We call it the Google consultant sometimes.
Right.
Um, what is it that you like? How do you do that with families when they come to see you?
Mhm.
So they're coming to you, right? And they're running into the bricks at home and they don't know what to do anymore. Mom, probably, it's usually mom, not always mom, but a lot of times it's mom
Mhm.
that has gone into the Google and they've somehow they've found you. How do you tell them about working with their child without overwhelming them with all the information that's out there about neurodivergence?
Well, for the longest time, I had like a resource sheet that I kind of like bullet pointed things and broke it down. But I was tired of like reworking that over and over again. So actually, last year, I published a book. And my book is called Naturally Divergent. And it kind of has like these main bullet points.
Right.
And it came out in September 2025. But what I did in this book was I kind of took these like one liners that I would tell families that really like took the meat of something that are these concepts that we do want to teach families that help them kind of bring these therapeutic processes and these evidence-based practices that help them actually apply them at home. Because I think that's one thing that they would miss a lot is like they would get these pieces of information and they wouldn't really understand the application at home. So they would hear like, oh, do this or do that, but like the application was never really explained to them. And so it was a lot about how can I do this right now? How can I start this right now? So for instance, like with PDA specifically, like you said, the pathological demand avoidance, it's a very specific application. And if you do it any other way, literally, you are going to set off your child's nervous system. And
Run into the
so,
wall.
yeah. And so, what I did in my book was I created this one liner, and I literally call it Cleo's one liner for success. And it's literally creating structure and like rules without that demand and rigidity that creates that set off for the nervous system. And so what it is, and I actually helped the PDA North America organization create a little blog, and so you can actually read about it there too. Is create this like visual for parents where what you're doing is you're creating a box that you're putting your kiddo in and you allow them to work within the box and they have that freedom,
They don't know they're in a box.
but they don't know they're in a box. Exactly. But it's that safety, it's a safety net. But they get to work within the box and they feel free. And you feel safe as the parent because you know that they're not going to go outside of that box. And so these are the kinds of things that I feel like we have to break down as therapists or as doctors or whatever professional you are to truly help parents or adults, if you're trying to navigate your own needs, help them actually take what we're telling them and then apply it in their home.
Yeah, part of what has we've seen in advances in residential care is one of the things that was a limitation of residential care was that they did really great. Kids did really great in residential care, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they couldn't take it home.
Yeah.
They get home and they didn't know how to apply it. Parents didn't have any education. If you go to
Yeah.
programs now, a lot there there's a lot of parent involvement. They're using tools like having shared language, how they name things, how they ask questions, how they do things, giving them the
Yeah.
structure that they could work with and some practice using it as well. So it's and it's an incredibly valuable resource that I'm glad that you've created. I remember being in the field for the first time working with kids and being introduced to a processing model for how
Mm-hmm.
ask questions and help kids make choices and redirect and so on. And it's an art. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is an art. There's a structure to it, sure, but you got to also, when you're at home, you got to live outside that structure a little bit, get
Hmm.
creative, kind of understand it in principle and practice, not just as a mechanism. And what are you able to do? Like, what are you doing in your work with families that allows them that gets them to practice? Like, what are you seeing, and how are you getting them to practice, and what are the results looking like when they do?
Yeah. I honestly incorporate that in like PCIT therapy. So that's the parent child interactive therapy. And a lot of times when we think about it, we think of this as only play therapy, but I actually love to use it and incorporate it into something like what you're saying, where we actually kind of teach them how they're going to do something like in a home environment. So, like, if we're doing something and they are wondering, okay, how are we going to incorporate this in the home? We can actually teach them in more of a natural way rather than like when, especially with teens, right? They feel like so awkward with the role play, right? And they're like, oh, I don't want to role play. That's so awkward. And you're like, yeah, of course. Like, that's so gross. Ew. And then, if you agree with them, they're like, yeah. And then they start doing something that they would do, right? Whether they're playing, I love them to like
This
start
is
playing a
gross. Let me
game.
show you.
Yeah, exactly. This is
Right.
gross. Let me show you. And so like if they have their game on their phone or something, I'm like, here, show me a game you're playing on your phone. And so they start showing me a game they're playing on their phone, right? And then all of a sudden, I'll give a demand and I'll say like, "Oh, can you switch to this game instead?" And they're like, "No, I hate that game." And then all of a sudden, I will literally demonstrate what we would want to do in the home, and I'll go through the flow chart and I will explain to the parent what we're doing. And the kid literally has no idea that we're showing it exactly as is. They think we're just having a conversation. And then
Right.
I will hand it over to the parent. And if they say something that we don't want to do, that's that parent child interactive therapy where I'm now coaching them through it. And so
Right.
that's kind of how we do this. And the child is just kind of sitting there like, I just want to play my
Yeah.
game. Right.
You're using their social processing limitations to your advantage at that
Exactly.
time. Right.
Exactly.
Great. That's fantastic. And do you find any parents picking up on it? Like how's that working? Do they really are they coming home with going home, coming back with stories like, wow, this worked. Like, like what are the stories that are coming at you?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And, I think this is part of like, for the longest time, I kind of was made to feel like my autism, ADHD was kind of like not a strength and, that I shouldn't like,
Superpower. What are you talking
I,
about?
that I shouldn't tell people. And what I found is that the way that I explain things like this and I do it in practice, it's how my brain works. And I found that so many people have enjoyed it because exactly this, they'll come back and they'll go, thank you for explaining it like this. This is the first time I felt confident going home and doing this with my kid. And they come back and they say these things. And I go, okay, I feel like I explained it well enough that I was able to communicate this in a good way. And yeah, they come back and do this. And for the longest time, I didn't explain it this way. I did it the way I was taught in school, or I was told that you're not supposed to use you're not supposed to talk about yourself too much, things like that. And it never felt right. I didn't feel like I got good feedback. And then I kind of started just doing it my way. And all of a sudden, this is where I'm getting the good feedback. I'm hearing that they were able to incorporate it in their home. They're coming back, giving me good stories. And so I'm glad that I was able to kind of get over that piece a little bit and say, I'm going to do it the way that makes me feel more comfortable. And the more comfortable I felt, the better results I'm actually
Yeah.
giving to the families. And they're coming back, giving me good feedback, which
And
means,
they're getting confident and feeling
yeah,
comfortable, which makes it work.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of brings me, I see therapists and programs for that matter. Um, so I got a couple of topics that I want to talk about that live on the fringes, which is, um, I got to see Stephen Hayes, and he sat there in front of like 500 clinicians and told them that their evidence-based practices were BS. He was not friendly about it. It was hilarious. And I thought it was great because I think research and evidence-based practices Yeah, it has its value, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
just because you've been doing something a long time and studying it for a long time doesn't necessarily mean that it's a great practice. And it sounds like what you've done is taken a platform of what you think is what we find is reliable evidence-based practice, right?
Hmm.
But you've taken it to a level that is your own, that you've taken
Hmm.
things that maybe you were even advised not to do as a young therapist. And now you're like,
Hmm.
no, actually, me telling a personal story is a good thing. And me personalizing the care that I'm doing with this individual helps us share a connection, and that connection makes us effective. What would you tell young therapists coming into the world? Because you also talked about like, bad services and bad care, and people have been traumatized by the
Right.
care professionals that they've interacted with. What would you say to young therapists coming into the field about the field that they're coming into and how to navigate it with some level of clarity, some level of discernment about the practice they're engaging in? What's the advice you
Yeah.
would give?
I would say to them that there's a reason that every therapist is unique. And there's a reason there's so many of us out here because not every client is going to work for you and you aren't going to work for every client.
Yeah.
And if it isn't a good match, that's okay. And then I'm also going to say that just because I did that with one client doesn't necessarily mean that would work for the next client. So
Right.
maybe I might share a personal story because I know that that's going to work with one client. But maybe my next client, I know that sharing that personal story may not be the right thing. And I explain it completely differently with the next client because I understand that
Mm.
their type of learning is very different. And so I think it's all about really knowing your clients and asking them like the best ways that they learn, and really understanding how to make it truly affirming for each client you see. And I think one of the most harmful things that happens in our current education system all throughout is that idea that one size fits all. And this
Everything works
even
for everybody, right?
happens, yeah, and this even happens when you go through school to get trained as a counselor, a therapist, which is that this is an evidence-based practice, this is the level, and this is how you do it. And you can't be doing that for each person that walks through your door. We can't give them the same type of therapy and do it the exact same way and deliver it the same way to every person. Because if we're
Hmm.
going to truly be affirming, each person is literally going to be given something differently every time they walk through. And the same client is going to come and present differently every day they walk into you. And you have to be ready for that.
Yeah. How do you develop that kind of, I mean, you're talking about clinical discernment, right? So what is it that helps a person? I think part of clinical discernment is also there's a couple of things at the base, which is, you know, not that you don't have an ego, but you get the ego out of the way. Hey, I
Mm-hmm.
might not be right for a therapist to admit that they might not be right for a person, or I need a different tool and I'm not sure what that is. Like to have a question live in your mind, like I'm not sure where to go with this and I need to find
Mm-hmm.
out more. Like how did you get to the place where you cultivated that level of discernment in your practice?
I had an amazing professor that I got to be with in a lot of my trauma courses when I was at NYU.
Mhm. Right.
Um, and she, like, literally every time we were in class, would remind us that, again, there are tons of therapists out there for a reason. And there's no way that you can help every person in this field. And you need to remember that even though you came into this field because you want to help everybody, that if you ever tried to do that, you would run yourself into the ground. And if you do that, you're not a good therapist. And
And
she would say that,
you might run them into the ground too,
right.
so right.
And so she would say that all the time, and it helped because yes, I'm a big softie. I'm always going to say I have room for more, right? Like that is definitely one of my downfalls, and it's something that I have to constantly remind myself. And something that I do just as a personal check is that if I have anxiety, and not the good kind of anxiety with a client, I need to do that self check of like, am I working with this person in a good capacity? Because if not, we're not a good fit.
Right. Absolutely. Well, it just sounds like staying grounded, in your professional practice is really, and you've gotten good guidance along the way and getting that
Yeah.
done. The other topic that I want to bring up, because this is something we see on our side of things as well, and something where people have gotten disappointing responses from other care providers, which is addressing medical complexities. When
Mm-hmm.
you've got a client, you got a child, family, and the child maybe they have a diagnosis, maybe it's they're on the spectrum, maybe they have ADHD or both or what have you, but they've also got these other co-occurring, pretty significant medical conditions. And maybe it's a thyroid issue, or maybe, I mean, heck, for adults, you got maybe it's MS, or maybe it's
Yeah.
these things that impact a person's mental health. They
Mm-hmm.
just do. How do you incorporate and like that into your practice? One of the things that we see is everybody runs in silos. The medical doesn't talk to the psychological and vice versa. So finding a
Yeah.
practitioner that can really kind of look at it all and be like, well, this condition actually causes these things.
Mm-hmm.
How did you start incorporating that into your practice, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not a doctor, so I don't have medical training exactly, but I've done I've done a lot of trainings that talk about, how they're connected. And I do have a lot of, what we call like clock hours, right? Where we really look at how they connect, as you said, and how they really are intertwined. There's a lot of new information out lately about how neurodivergent neurotypes have a very different medical makeup, and
Mm-hmm.
how it really changes the dynamic and what's going on with them. And so that is something that I've really been continuing to discuss. The way that we really look at it is if parents are telling me, that they're seeing these symptoms, I really encourage them and help them advocate for just working with their doctors. I let them know, hey, like, let's just look at these things. I give them information. If they feel like they're not being heard by their doctor, I just help them like with information that they could advocate for. I help them with sending them articles, things that they could show their doctor. Again, I really do make sure to be careful of how I'm walking that line. I don't want
Yeah, you
them
stay in your
to,
lane, right?
yeah, but at the same time, like as mental health professionals, we still get to advocate and help them. I do very much try to stay connected with their doctor. I really try to, be that person that can help connect a little bit and provide information if possible. Um, there's a lot of connection with PANS and PANDAS with young kids. And so when we're doing assessments for young children, and we're looking at like the sudden onset of symptoms around OCD, like, there's a lot more connection that we need to do around that. And so those are things that we've been really focused on lately. And so I think that there's a lot more connection, especially around children, that us mental health professionals, psychiatric providers, and doctors have been doing, especially when we're looking at assessments. And I think that's why the mental health professionals, especially like in our state here, have been advocating for more connection when it does come to diagnosing.
Well, I mean, I think that's the largest problem people face when they get inadequate care is that, one, you've got providers who are not really good at their job. That happens,
Yeah.
right? Especially in
Yeah.
state
Sadly.
systems. I mean, honestly, that's where we see a lot of it, hospitals and state systems. But more importantly, you also see that they're siloed. You've got teams of people that are treating a person. You got a psychiatrist, you got a doc, you got a therapist,
Yeah.
and that's a team, and they're not talking to one another. The advantage
Hmm.
that you see in treatment is that you've got all those people actually talking to one another all the time. And parents also feel like they have a voice when they're talking to the providers. And they're saying, well, we've got this. And for a psychiatrist that's not talking to the medical doctor, especially if there's a co-occurring medical issue, there are a lot of psychiatrists out there who just dump meds on kids. They're
Yeah.
symptom chasing. That's what they're doing. It's like, well, they're depressed or they're anxious or they're, have ADHD and they're all over the place. It's like, let's give them something to calm down. Let's get them something to stir up. Let's get them something to concentrate. Let's do all of those things at once. And suddenly you've got a 16-year-old on 8 meds. And,
Hmm.
and, you know, that alone will give you some medical conditions if you're not watching out for it. So,
Yeah,
I think that it sounds to me like you and I would agree on this statement that in an ideal world would be a lot more intentional and a lot more collaborative in our approach to care. Um, which
absolutely.
which kind of brings me to this center that you're opening. Your website does not do you justice. You've got a book out there, you're opening a center, like there's all these cool things that you're doing, and I had no idea. So now I want to ask a little bit about NeuroBloom, the center
Yeah.
that it's open, it's about to open. Where are you at in the stages for that?
Yeah, our grand opening is September 19th.
Right,
Um, and we're when I say we, it's family owned. So it's me and my husband, and we're really, really excited.
right,
Um, it's it's a I guess that my brainchild. I'm so excited about it. Um, and so it's it'll have providers. So we have an amazing SLP joining us who's a feeding specialist.
okay,
In office, we have myself and then another mental health specialist who also specializes in special education needs. And then we're going to have a women's practitioner, ARNP, coming in.
right.
Um, and then we're on the lookout for prescribers. We need a couple to come on in. We're still looking for a unicorn prescriber. So if you know of
Right.
anyone, let me know.
Okay.
um,
So
and so those,
you've got the complement of medical, you've got psychiatric,
mm-hmm,
you're looking for psychiatric, you're looking for a prescriber,
we're
you've got
looking.
clinicians, you're building something that's breaking down these silo walls that we're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. And this is also, to stop that that pipeline of sending out disabled and or neurodivergent individuals to places where they don't exactly know the mission or values of those providers. And then we end up sending them out and they get traumatized. And so we're also hoping to kind of stop that chain as well, right? Where they
Hmm.
know the type of providers they're seeing. They know that they share the values of they're neuroaffirming, they have backgrounds in either neurodivergence, disability, LGBTQIA2 plus, like they have all of those needs, and so they know who they're going to see. They're trusted providers, they're vetted, right? And so that's
Right.
kind of what we can provide for them. And then the community center part, we're going to have a sensory gym. So this is like all the equipment you would see at like an occupational therapist or a physical therapist, right? So like sensory swings, gym equipment, like if you really like your body being squeezed, we have like different equipment that squeezes your body. Or if you like to go and do sensory play, we're going to have like an area where there's water tables, sand tables, ways to explore
Nice.
sensory in your own avenue. And so we have different setups for different age and movement capabilities. And it's going to also make it so that there aren't tons of people around. There's hour sign up. So like we're going to have about 15 people per area per hour. So that's kind of so that we can keep the visual noise, the actual loud noises down. We have a
Hmm.
game room where there's going to be like a pool table and tech so people can play on computers, DSs, those kinds of things. And then we're going to have a library. So there's going to be two avenues for the library. You can just sit there, read, lend the books that we have. And then there's also going to be a purchasing where we're bringing in marginalized authors, marginalized resources where like you can't get these books at Barnes and Noble and everything because they don't highlight resources for neurodivergent, disabled, LGBTQIA plus
Right.
resources. And we're going to have those all there from authors who are part of these groups that don't get their books published at, or I mean, held
Uh,
at,
they don't sit on the shelves at Barnes and Noble with the
yeah,
50% off and the big table. Right. Exactly.
exactly. And so we're going to have those there and they can grab them and buy them and they'll be easily accessible. And our entire we'll also have like a gym, a fitness, a workout place just to keep your body healthy. And it'll have equipment that's ADA accessible, as well as, things for individuals like, if you wear Down syndrome, it's hard to go work out at our local gyms. They don't have equipment that's specially made for somebody who might just want to work on their muscle tone or things like that. And it
Mm.
also sometimes can be just intimidating. That's what I've heard feedback from some of our population.
Overstimulating. Yep.
Overstimulate, yes, the lights. Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's
Um,
overstimulating to me. I mean, you know what I
right.
mean?
Same, same. And so we're just going to create a little bit better environment, more inclusive, really just have our individuals of our community really built at the center. And then my personal favorite, we're going to have a very small cafe, just coffee and some baked goods. And these baked goods are celiac friendly because I have celiac disease and there's nowhere in our area I can eat. And so we're going to have
Really?
like, yes, we are going to have cinnamon rolls. We are going to have some muffins, bagels, and I am freaking excited about that.
You're just doing this so you have a cafe you can go to, right?
Exactly. I'm just doing this whole center. It's just so I can eat cinnamon rolls.
Right. That's a good, I mean, that's a good cause, I think. Eating cinnamon rolls, that's a good cause. Um,
Exactly.
well, that's really exciting for you. When I get out that way, I hope to, I know you're just across the water from Victoria, Canada, if I'm not mistaken, or BC
Yes.
rather. Yeah.
Yes, we are.
And I would plan a trip out that way. I get to Washington, I don't know, once, maybe twice a year if I can. There's a few programs out that
Okay.
way that we take a look at, but I'll I'll
Yes.
I'll I'll steer it towards the time when you're going to be opening the center, so we'll have to stay in touch about that. The
Yes, we
the
would love
question
for
I
you to
have,
visit.
oh yeah, man, I like going out and seeing people's like cool new stuff and the sensory rooms and things like that. It's pretty neat. The so if you were you're a parent. You got a
Mhm.
child that's on the spectrum. You have experience with living on the spectrum yourself. So you had some grounding experientially in the neurodivergent world, which gave you probably, to a certain extent, some advantages in
Mhm.
navigating it when you were finding care.
Yeah.
When you've got a parent, if you got a parent out there, just for the listeners, you got a parent out there that's on the fringes of identifying what's going on with their child, determining that they are on the spectrum, or they've got a condition that requires care, that requires help and support. They're kind of doing the I don't know what to do now thing. What's advice you would give to that parent?
Ooh, it's hard to pick like just one, but I think I think honestly, like the first thing I would do, because what happens, I think, the most is that our kids that are, diagnosed autistic, when we are struggling the most is when we are forcing not only ourselves but our kids to do things that are not natural to their own system because we're trying to fit into social norms. So I think what I would say is follow your child's lead and follow your own lead. Do do what is more natural to them and you. Like for instance, a really great example is if dinner time is like really chaotic and stressful and it's easier to not have like everybody sitting at the table and you guys are like eating staggered or someone's eating on the couch and someone else is eating in the kitchen because you guys don't like hearing each other chew, uh do it. It's okay. Like it's protect your peace because that's way more important than going to a friend's house on Saturday and saying that you all had a quality dinner time. Like
Right.
I think that's what I end
You
up
did. It
talking
just
to
wasn't at the
parents
same
about
table.
most. Yeah, like that's what I think I end up talking to families about most is letting go of the societal expectations or doing it how you grew up or how you expected it to go. And I'm not saying that letting go of those things is easy or it like feels natural. Um, but I would say that that's the first go to is that whatever you think you're or feels like a battle, don't battle it anymore. Let it go. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a choose your battles things, but I think you're also talking about breaking down societal norms and deciding what's actually important, and
Yeah,
deciding what you want the outcome to be. The outcome is, I want as healthy and happy a child as I can have. I want,
exactly.
I want my home to be a place of refuge.
Hmm.
I want to be able to rest in my own home. And
Yeah,
if you're trying to put the square peg in round holes and it's making your home, unstable and not a place of refuge, then maybe you need to rethink the entire equation for a second.
exactly.
And, just because you did it as a kid doesn't necessarily mean that you could, and maybe you negotiate. Maybe you
Yeah,
want to have the family at the table one night a week and
yeah,
everybody can they can work it out for one night a week.
yes,
Or, I think that it requires people to get creative. I really do. Like parents
totally.
feel like they say they haven't written a book about it. It's like, well, there's lots of books out there, but it doesn't land, but it's hard to take a book and land it and practice in the home, just like
Hmm.
you know, so you've got to get creative. I'd say the other thing is get help, like find somebody like Khalil
Yeah,
and have her guide you through what to do. Like, don't be afraid to get help. I think we're better at it now as a society, but
yes,
so many people just don't go get help. They're like, oh no, it's fine. We're going to handle it on our own, right? Until it
yeah,
really starts becoming more than they can handle. I'm like, don't start there. If you see it's becoming a problem, like talk to somebody about it, find resources, get involved, and
yeah.
that sort of thing. And on that note, like, are you? I know you say you don't say no. Are you taking clients right now? How do people find you? How do they connect with you? What's the story on families needing your services and how to get with you?
Yeah, I know. I really don't say no for the most part. I guess I can say like I'm always taking clients, right? They can find me. I'm on social media. That always works. That seems to be really easy for families. So on Instagram, my handle is at naturally divergent therapist, or you can find me on my website too. And that's at www.mccartytherapysolutions.com. And that's pretty easy. You can just send me a quick contact message, and I get back to you pretty quickly on those too.
And the center's opening September, you say? That's the
Yep.
grand opening date?
Yes,
Seems
our
pretty solid.
center.
You'll let us know.
Yep. Nope. That is our official day. We have some amazing speakers coming too. Like, I feel so grateful. We've got some amazing speakers. And if you want to follow the updates on our center, we have a website for the center as well. It's www.neurobloomcenter.com. And then also
Great.
on our Instagram as well. And we're posting updates constantly for that. And you can check out our speakers and all that. It's going to be pretty awesome.
Now, is your book also out there in the ethers? Can they find it on,
Yes,
whatever
yeah, it's
platform you buy things from?
yeah, it's you can find it on whatever platforms. It's also it just released about a month ago or so for audiobook as well. So you can find
Oh,
it in
cool.
audiobook form. I know I'm an audiobook person, so I was really happy
Me
when we
too.
did that. Yeah.
Who reads it for you?
Yeah, so I actually had somebody else read it for me. Her name
Okay.
is her name is Melina Brinker, and it's really great because I was tired of my own voice, so I had somebody else do it. I was like, you guys don't need to hear me talk anymore. And she's absolutely wonderful, and she reads her own special note at the beginning. And honestly, like I didn't know she was going to do that. It was a surprise, and it really was touching for me. So that was really special. Yeah.
That's really awesome.
But yeah, so you can find that on uh audiobook links and yeah, it's also available on Amazon too for places that need it to be shipped pretty far. So yeah.
And the book is naturally divergent, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Awesome. Well, Khalil, it's been really fantastic having you on the show. Thanks for agreeing to meet with me and us navigate the
Yeah,
time difference and everything else. I can't wait to hear about the opening, to maybe come out there and see you folks and have some fun while we're out there. But I really appreciate what you're doing in the community. This has been Head Inside Mental Health with Todd Weatherly. Khalil McCarty has been our guest. Khalil, thanks for having us. Thanks for being on the show.
yeah, thank you so much.
I feel so lonely and lost in here. I need to find